is really important. I can remember growing up here in Blandonia Church, and I was sitting probably about this third pew, maybe the age of 11, 12 years old. I don't remember the brother's name, but he had an incredible impact on my life. I didn't spend a lot of time with him. As a matter of fact, I only saw him that one time during the church service. But when he came into service, I saw this strong black man walk in, and he had a medallion hanging around his neck. And I looked over at him. I said, "Sir, what is that, if you don't mind me asking?" And he was with the NAACP. And he introduced me to that at that young age. And it sparked something in me. Social justice. Looking in the back, my beautiful aunt back there, I call her sister girl, Annie Waddell. She's more like my sister. Had an incredible impact on my life in so many ways. But I remember in middle school, I was given a homework assignment to write a paper. And I chose to write on Brown versus the Board of Education. Something about it spoke to me. Social justice again. She inspired me actually to share that message. She was an educator, but she wasn't required to read it. But she read it, and she inspired me to do something with that. Family and Blandonia. Miss Sophia. I knew it was Miss Sophia Judd. I can't say enough about Miss Sophia, but I can say this on today, now at 51 years old. Sophia was talking to me when I was a little bitty fella. She said, "You're gonna be a preacher one day. I'm gonna get you in the seminary. Some kind of way we're gonna get you in the seminary." I didn't see it coming, but I stand here today as a minister, all out of Blandonia.
Amen.
Right now, my work with the city is around social justice with the Asheville community, and we're doing some incredible things. We have decided to take on the issue of reparations, and we are working through that, doing the hard work. Another year and a half, we'll be in a position to make our final findings on reparations, and that has been something long coming in our community, and proud of that work. Right here out of Blandonia.
Amen.
I want to share something with you because Blandonia made history last week.
Yes.
Blandonia made history last week. I came on board the city in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and got the workload on my sleeves. Within our city, we had a Black History proclamation, but it was outdated. It did not reflect our story, in my opinion, and our struggle in the Black community. So I rewrote that proclamation. And on last Thursday, the proclamation was signed by the mayor of the city and presented to the community.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, I'd just take a moment to read that. Because this is for all of us. City of Asheville proclamation. Whereas the month of February is nationally designated as Black History Month, and whereas Black History Month is a time of acknowledgement and celebration for all Americans to honor and recognize those who have advanced the causes of civil rights, human rights, strengthened our nation, our communities, our families, and who were instrumental in building a legacy of excellence for which we are inspired, along with building a nation of freedom and equality for all people. And whereas in Black History Month, we as citizens, community, and a nation acknowledge the historically painful past of chattel slavery, Jim Crow, and the atrocities taken against African Americans, the lives lost, the harm committed, and the present day ramifications that are still impacting our African American communities for which we as a city are committed to addressing through our reparations efforts, policies, practices, and visioning to make Asheville a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. And whereas during Black History Month, all Americans are encouraged to reflect on and to honor the journey of African Americans, the rich ancestral heritage, the resilience, the sacrifices, the courage, and the enduring legacy of invaluable contributions, including but not limited to medicine, science, architecture, education, government, engineering, the arts, leadership, and social justice, including our local heroes and heroines of Asheville. And whereas in acknowledging African Americans and celebrating Black History Month, we do so collectively as citizens, as a community and a country with appreciation and gratitude. Gratitude for the remarkable strength, commitment, and resolve of the human spirit of the African Americans to yearn for and create and experience one of the greatest freedoms allotted to all persons of the human race, the autonomy of being recognized, valued, and dignified as a human being, for all persons are created equally. And whereas in honoring the immeasurable benefaction of African Americans locally in our society and the globe, all Americans are encouraged to reflect on the past successes and the challenges of African Americans, be inspired by these achievements, such that every citizen continues to improve our society so that we live up to and embody the ideals and virtues of freedom, equality, and justice for all people of the human race. Now, therefore, I, Esther Manheimer, Mayor of the City of Asheville, do hereby proclaim February 2023 is Black History and Legacy Month in Asheville, and encourage all citizens in Asheville to recognize the importance of Black History and Legacy Month in our lives and heritage, and to join in this annual celebration in remembrance and recognition of the ongoing contributions and achievements of African Americans. And witness hereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Asheville, North Carolina, to be affixed this 24th day of January, 2023. Signed, Esther Manheimer.
Amen. Amen.
You can see it here, but you probably can't see this writing on the side. Thank you for inspiring me, for your leadership and your love. Written by your grandson, Marcus R. Kirkman Sr. Signed 24 January 2023. I want to take a moment and present this to my grandfather.
All right.
He did not know that was coming. As I prepare to do my best in reading this message, the context that I ask all of us is a historical context. As I look around the room, there are living legends amongst our congregation. There are people in this room who are actually alive when this message was being shared. During the height of the civil rights movements, there are activists in this room. So when they hear this message, it is going to land with them differently, perhaps a little bit more personal. Then there are a group of us who we look back on it and we wonder, what would I have done had I been there? Would I have been in DC? Would I have been in the streets walking, how could I have contributed? Because I see all of that greatness that had taken place. And then my children only know about it through me, so they're a little bit more removed from that. And then the children of today, almost completely disconnected, unless we share this message. So as we listen to this message this morning, I just want to remind us, Dr. King's words full of incredible wisdom. But it's amazing that this message was 60-some years ago, and yet we're facing some of the same issues right here today in 2023. And as a Black community, it is really important that we continue to do our work as well. Because Dr. King had a message for the globe, but as I share it, he specifically had things for us to do in taking care of our communities, and that is so very important. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree is a great beacon, light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who have been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still badly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall in. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it is obvious today that America has defaulted on its promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So so we've come to cash this check. A check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make the real promises of democracy. Now is the time to raise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children.
Yeah.
For it would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of this moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not the end, but it is the beginning. Those who hoped that the Negro needed to blow off some steam will be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright days of justice emerges. And that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the worn threshold which loads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful places, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to distrust all white people. For many of our white brothers are, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. And we can look at the news right now and know just how real that is. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their adulthood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and the Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote for. That is our work to do, family. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like the waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulation. Some of you come fresh from a narrow jail cell. Some of you come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. And so I say to you today, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out that true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed like an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children one day will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racist, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and little black girls will be able to join hands with the little white boys and the white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that one day we will all be free. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, tears of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the hiking Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountains of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and every molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every city and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of that old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last.